Chinese people are touched by the story of Luigi. It seems America's health system is becoming a tool for those giant companies to stripping American people down.
Well, it turns out that banning TikTok didn't stop the supposed Chinese influence that Congress was so worried about, because ahead of the looming TikTok ban, TikTokers decided to migrate over to RedNote, which is an actual Chinese social media app, and the result has been pretty interesting, to say the least. So Americans are learning that Chinese people who they were taught to hate are actually pretty cool. They're welcoming, they're funny and sassy and interesting and horny just like they are. And it led to a lot of interesting conversations and discoveries by both sides about the other's culture. And I've got to say, it is incredibly beautiful and wholesome to see American and Chinese people talk to each other for the very first time. Because at the end of the day, we are all human beings. We don't have to hate each other because of arbitrary borders that were created before any of us were even born. We're all the same and our destinies are linked. So it's important to have these conversations. It's important for propagandized Americans to learn that they actually have more in common with people around the world than they probably thought. Having said that, there is unfortunately a real downside to Americans effectively hijacking a Chinese social media app, and I think it's important to discuss the implications of that as well, which we will do in this video. But I do want to first talk about a discovery that Chinese people recently made about Americans, and it's about our healthcare system, as you could have guessed. Now, one Chinese user on RedNote in particular, named Jian, was especially stunned after comparing medical bills with Americans.
Some of you share your medical bill, and the cost of ambulance shocked me, man. Look at this, $9,000 for an ambulance and the insulin. That's like a 3 month of income for an average American. And this, $900, just for an appointment and painkillers. In China, it only costs about $10. And this, in China, we never worry about the ambulance charges. Today, I will show you how much the ambulance costs in Shanghai, which is the most expensive city in China. Let's look at this table I made by using the official data. You guys can take a screenshot for later review. This is why some Chinese followers commented yesterday, it only costs around $50 in China for ambulance services. You know, those politicians should have taken care of your people first. At the end, salute to Luigi. In China, the government bears large shares of the medical expenses for us, and we only need to pay around like $100 per month. But you guys are paying like giant part of your monthly income. Thinking like, what? I can't even imagine how anxious you guys are when you get sick. And that's not right. You should have to feel safe and secure when you are the most vulnerable. And that's the basic human needs and the basic responsibility for those healthcare insurance companies to bear. As human beings, I really feel for you guys.
Now, Jian in particular wasn't the only one interested in American healthcare. In fact, there were plenty of examples of Chinese users asking Americans if it's really as bad as they were told. As this TikToker says, someone in the comments of RedNote asked me if we really had to pay for an ambulance in America or if that was just their government's propaganda. And that comment is so hilarious and telling to me because that person was so shocked by that fact that they literally questioned whether or not it was a lie by their government to make Americans look bad. But it's not Chinese propaganda, my friend. It's 100% true. Now, you heard Jian drop some references to Luigi Mangione at the beginning of this video, but I can assure you, he is not an outlier because as Newsweek reports, Luigi Mangione is a hit on RedNote, and they add, entering the first name, Luigi on the app reveals hundreds of posts of fan edits, cosplay, viral tributes, and even makeup tutorials dedicated to the alleged killer, who some view as a vigilante folk hero. Mangione has entered a not guilty plea to all charges. Now, to demonstrate their point, as you can see, one user created a comprehensive makeup tutorial to replicate Luigi's mugshot. They've created art of Luigi Mangione, and one Chinese user even created latte art of Luigi Mangione, which is genuinely impressive, but they got excited, as you can see by the comment, when they realized that a bunch of Americans found their art and liked it. Now, there's this cartoon someone shared comparing Luigi to Batman, and there's even a phone case somebody got made of Luigi Mangioni's perp walk. I mean, that's further evidence that the perp walk did not go the way that they had planned. So Americans are finding out that a lot of English-speaking Chinese users on RedNote are actually pretty interested in American culture, and they care about the issues that affect us, like healthcare is one example. But there's also been a broader cultural exchange where some Americans are trying to learn to say certain phrases in Mandarin on RedNote, and then you have Chinese people who don't already speak English trying to learn certain phrases to communicate with Americans in English. And what's happening feels really significant, and some American TikTokers, they feel that. So they went back to TikTok to share their reactions after being on RedNote for a little bit. And what's obvious is that this kind of started out as a rebellious ploy by TikTokers to antagonize the US government for banning TikTok, but it morphed into something much more wholesome and substantial. And I want to play a quick compilation to show you what I mean.
有很多人口朋友绕了很多线，这些工会没有你们。Something
so hilarious about the US government forcing Americans to realize that they live in the bad place and that China pities them. People on RedNote being like, oh, you guys can't afford groceries? That's insane. Oh my god, your MRI was $1,200? It shouldn't be that way, you guys. You guys are humans. You deserve rights. And Americans being like, they got a point. What the fuck? Like, it's actually insane that the American government pushed Americans into the hands of seeing that, oh my goodness, these people are nice and welcoming, more welcoming than the US government. What a backfire. Like, it's actually, you couldn't write this. You couldn't make this shit up. The most hilarious way to push Americans into the hands of, like, the great superpower that you're so afraid of is for them to just look at the people being nice to them and being like, oh, you guys deserve healthcare. You're humans. You should be able to afford groceries. Look at this grocery haul. We can actually afford food. This is what it's like to afford food. This is what it's like to afford your life. I feel bad for you guys over there. Like, it's actually insane. Pity, the main emotion to the people who've already been on RedNote being like, hi, TikTok refugees, I'm so sorry you live there.
This is a historic moment that does not happen often. The citizens of two rivaling countries are coming together in solidarity and sharing culture with each other. This is a beautiful moment in human history. And unlike all of the historical events we as millennials and Gen Z have lived through, this one is actually a good one.
And this is really significant. Americans have a particular perception of Chinese people that was fed to us through Western media and government propaganda, and it's created assumptions and expectations about what Chinese people were like in our heads from such a young age, right? But interacting with them shatters all of those preconceived notions. You know, when you go to RedNote, you're immediately greeted by Chinese people who are incredibly welcoming and kind, not to mention some of them are super funny. And just seeing fellow humans treat you with respect, that radicalizes you in a way no propaganda ever could. And hundreds of thousands of Americans are now having this eye-opening experience. And I think that it's important, and it should inspire more people to challenge themselves and talk to others, not just online, but in real life. And I'm kind of having to challenge myself to do the same as well, because we've all kind of become really isolated since COVID. And for a lot of us, our only engagement with other human beings is through negative interactions on Twitter. And that's just not healthy, right? It kind of sours our perception of humans in general and makes us almost misanthropic. So it's nice to see that this has been a learning experience for so many Americans. And I'm glad that they are feeling good about this. But with that being said, as I alluded to earlier, there is a downside to Americans flooding a Chinese social media app. And I say this because they may have inadvertently catalyzed changes to the app that will ultimately shut Chinese Americans off from their own Chinese culture. And this TikTok user explains what's happening and how it affects her.
RedNote or Xiaohongshu just released an update in the greater China region with a function to separate out foreign IPs. And there are now talks of moving all foreign IPs to a separate server and having a different IP for those who are in the Greater China area. I know through VPNs and other ways, people are still able to access the app, but essentially this is going to kill the app for Chinese Americans who actually uses the app to connect with the Chinese content, Chinese language, Chinese culture. It's a way for me to feel, I don't know, all of this just because we wanted to say fuck you to the US government. I get it, but I just wish it wasn't at the cost of others. That's all I have to say about that.
And that is genuinely heartbreaking because as a Chinese American who used RedNote to stay in touch with Chinese people and Chinese culture, she may lose that as a result of this mass migration from TikTok. And obviously, nobody intended for this to happen, and it doesn't take away from all of the positives that came out of this, but it's still a really great cost to pay if you're a Chinese person living outside of China, and this was one of the only social media apps that you used, and it was a link to Chinese culture. And to be clear, I don't think that this is a plot by the app to cut off communications between both cultures, because basically, as I understand it, everyone was in one big feed in the same server before TikTok users joined, but now that there's so much foreigners, they've created different servers because, like all social media companies, they're trying to tailor content to individual users and thus assume Americans and Canadians and Europeans are going to want to see different things on their feed than Chinese users. So there has to be some way to break these cultural barriers and talk to other people around the world without severing connections between immigrants and their communities. So that's something that I feel like needs to be discussed more in this conversation. And I think that anyone who creates some sort of an app that fulfills this demand that apparently is there, it could be huge. But another question is, how long is this actually going to last? Because the mass migration from TikTok to RedNote is exciting because right now everybody is still in their honeymoon phase. So at some point the novelty might wear off and eventually people might want to go back to a feed more suited for their specific interests. I mean, that's kind of how people get addicted to social media in the first place. And if RedNote isn't able to meet that need, then, you know, long-term, people might not necessarily use it. And if users from America do fall off, I hope that it kind of returns back to what it was before Americans joined the app. So that way, people who used it originally aren't shut out from their own culture. But still, regardless of how long this lasts, I think that Americans have learned some really valuable lessons from it, especially when it comes to healthcare. It doesn't have to be this way. But it is because our government is corrupt and doesn't give a shit about us. And before anyone comes in saying, oh, well, yeah, well, you know, China's bad too because of this and that, every country has problems, obviously, but their reaction to our healthcare system is not unique, right? People around the world react the same way when they hear about the cost of healthcare in America. And to show you what I mean, Politics Joe asked British people their thoughts about American healthcare costs, and they were just as shocked as Chinese people on RedNote were. So let's watch.
Yeah.
You need an ambulance.
Okay.
How much does an ambulance cost? Call out in America.
I don't know, $100?
No. Way more.
Shall I go up?
Yeah, you should go up, yeah.
$200.
Times that by 10.
No.
Yeah, what, like upwards like $200?
About 2,500.
Oh my God! That's horrific!
Yeah.
For an ambulance journey?
Yeah. On average, about $2,500.
Ouch.
Literally.
And then you just get sent that bill.
Yeah. If you're uninsured, yeah.
Bye! I'm sorry!
So, you are an American.
I am, unfortunately. We always like to say get a Uber or a Lyft, don't get an ambulance because it's going to be a lot of money.
You would get an Uber to the hospital.
Oh, absolutely. The ambulances are ridiculous.
So I'd rather be die at home, alone.
Ambulance call out, how much do you think that costs?
Zero payment.
Zero payment?
Yeah, zero payment.
No. It costs $2,500.
For real?
Yeah. Okay, cool. you look. An inhaler.
$100.
Yeah, you're pretty close. It's a bit more.
120.
250 to 350.
For an inhaler?
Yes.
Man. So if you're poor, you're dead.
I know that it's like public healthcare in the UK. In the US, fortunately, I'm able to get healthcare through my parents, their jobs, but like I carry an EpiPen, and I know that like the cost of that has just been rising. So like there's like very few companies that even compete, so it's sort of like a monopoly for the EpiPen. Even though like we have insurance, it cost my parents about a couple hundred, even with insurance.
So 2 EpiPens. Okay. How much do you reckon they are?
$80.
600.
$40.
I'm afraid not.
More?
More?
$100.
More.
150.
More.
250.
More.
Shut the fridge.
More.
£300. $600. What? Why?
That's a very good question.
$600.
Yeah.
So if you're poor, you're dead. Yep, pretty much. And I'll link you to both of the videos in that clip down below and highly encourage you to watch them because he asked them more questions and their answers are super entertaining. But I love how both of the random Americans that they bumped into could talk at length about how shitty our healthcare system is. I mean, I'm telling you, everyone in America has a healthcare horror story or they know somebody who does. Everyone in America has had a bad interaction with an insurance company. This is just what we all deal with. Our healthcare system is just trash for regular people. I mean, it's great if you can afford it, but not so great if you can't. And the point of me showing you the reaction from British people is to demonstrate that Chinese people aren't alone in their shock. This is everyone's reaction when they hear about the American healthcare system. We are uniquely terrible. We are an outlier. And Americans need to understand that so that way they demand more. Right? We are the richest country in the world, yet 68,000 people die every single year due to a lack of health insurance. Medical debt is the #1 cause of bankruptcy in this country. Every other comparable OECD nation guarantees healthcare to all of its citizens, and the fact that we don't is embarrassing, and our lawmakers should never be able to live that down.